So while making my lunch today, I thought we could talk about week number 3 of Victober. It is the 21st of October and I'm getting a little bit more back into Victorian books. So I've almost finished The Doctor's Wife. I was on the brink of finishing it last night. I always procrastinate, I think so, yeah, finishing books. When there are 20 pages left, I just put them away and don't finish it. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's something very interesting wrong with me, but I just do this all the time. So I will go and finish that after I've had my lunch today. I spent my morning working and The Doctor's Wife is becoming a little bit more dramatic. The language is still really beautiful and entertaining to read, but I don't really find it funny anymore. And I don't find that the comedic is really lifting me out of the very dramatic and romantic elements of this book. And it's just a little bit, I don't know. I'm not enjoying the second half. It's definitely not as good as the first half and I don't feel like it's really delivering. I've said this before, but I cannot really get into it without spoiling either of those two novels. But it is a clever play on Madame Bovary and gender. And I think you can definitely see that this is written by a woman and Madame Bovary is written by men. I didn't like Madame Bovary. I do like this because of the reasons I didn't like Madame Bovary. That is not present in this book. But I also don't really see this being a 5-star. And then I did also... okay, first, let's figure out what I'm going to have for lunch. Oh, I think I have bagels. Oh my gosh. Yes, I have gluten-free bagels. And I got this everything bagel mix, which is delicious. It's like a combination of herbs and seeds. So I'll just make a nice bagel. I think I have some hummus. Maybe I have some cheese. I'm not sure. Oh my gosh, just me opening it and... smell is delicious. Talking about smells, I did get some wax smells off of Etsy, which I will turn on. Also, Etsy is not becoming a good platform anymore. I sold a few bookmarks on Etsy and they have all like fees that all have different names that sound legit, but it's just... it's giving me landlord vibes. The money they actually give me after the person has paid is just a little bit more than the shipment costs. So about half of it. They keep saying that it's like listing fees, taxes, and all just like processing fees. And I feel like, well, those are all the same things. I'm not sure. It feels a little bit sketchy. Okay, the Elizabeth Gaskell story. Also, I feel like the lighting really is great. Can I put you somewhere? Honestly, the life of a vlogger. Okay, is this better? I'm not sure. We'll try. Yeah, the Elizabeth Gaskell. Of course, I loved it. Elizabeth Gaskell is a master of short story writing. So this was The Grey Woman. I listened to it while I was doing some crafts. I will show you in the B-roll all the little crafts that I did with various success, but it wasn't about any sort of success. So The Grey Woman is about... I'm forgetting it. Oh no, it's like the Tenant of Whitehall Hall, but extremely gothic. That is how I would like to describe it. So it's about a woman who tries to leave her husband. It also really reminded me of The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, which was a historical fiction that was on the women's rights list. I really enjoyed. Yeah, I don't really want to say a whole lot more about the plot except for that it's just a perfect gothic feminist story, and you should definitely read it. I feel like with short stories I really can point out some elements that I love. I love the plot. I love how the short story was structured, which I always think Elizabeth Gaskell is so good at. I love the sapphic hints in this story, although I don't believe Elizabeth Gaskell wrote it that way. I definitely read it that way. There's a big theme of escape and disguise, which is one of my favorite themes within gothic stories. This was a great one. Really enjoyed it. Elizabeth Gaskell will yet have to disappoint me with one of her short stories because it has not happened yet. Yeah, I'm gonna make my bagels now. I look tired, but I am quite energetic. I am in a good mood and my reading has been going better. So I finished The Doctor's Wife. Was not as impressed with the second half as I was in the first half, like I said. I did still think the whole romantic element of the other book, the whole romantic setting, writing elements all came very beautifully together. I do think that the tone of the story really integrated well with the tone of the writing. So I felt like that matched really well, and I really enjoyed the more jabs at people who judge sensational writing. And at some point the author even says this is not a sensation novel. I mean, I don't really know enough about the genre to know if that was like sarcasm or if it was a jab. One of the main characters is an author. He didn't really turn out to be a main character, which I would have loved. I really loved Sam and I thought he was definitely a big part of the comedic element of the book, which very much lost itself in the second half of the book. Overall, I really enjoyed it. It's gonna be a 4-star for me. I would definitely have loved this book more if it had been a pure comedy. Then I started listening to Black Beauty, which was an option on my TBR, but I really wanted an audiobook while I was making the little booklet ornaments. And I am over halfway through of this now. It is exactly like the film from 1994 that I watched as a child, or watched and watched again, for as far as my emotions could take it, because it's one of the most important films from my childhood. Most formative, I would say. Like, little background, when I was young, I love horses. I mean, I still love them, but I was obsessed with it as a child. And there was this one horse that was my Black Beauty. I started riding her when I was 9, and eventually her current owner, who had like, it's not a farm, I don't know the English word, but where you have your riding lessons, she was like not really serving a purpose for them anymore because she had some health issues. And when I was 12, I think, like, my parents didn't really have the finances, but they like made a deal with a local farmer and a deal with them saying we can provide her with a good life if you can sell her to us for a cheap price. Okay, continuing story time. Yeah, where was I? Where did I leave off? So yes, when I was 12 years old, I got my own horse, my own Black Beauty, and it was a lot of responsibility because while she was at the stables of a farmer, her care was completely up to me. I had to make sure that, well, I had to make sure of everything. The only thing they did was feed her and all the other stuff, which, if you know a little bit about horses, you know that it takes a good few hours every day. So every day after school from age 12 to 18, I would hop on my bike and take care of her. And then I would come home for dinner and do my homework. That was my life throughout most of my teenage years. And I had such a strong bond and connection with her. And I loved her dearly. I had to give her up when I became ill because I was just not able to care for her anymore. That means that a book like this, which is from the horse's perspective, so from Black Beauty throughout his whole life and everything he experiences in the 19th century, so it's a bit different, of course, Victorian novel, but experiencing such a responsibility, and I guess just believing through this book that a horse has the emotional understanding of a human being. My young brain took that responsibility even more serious, and I think I believed our bond to be even stronger because I had watched that film. So reading this, it brings it all back. It brings all the very tragic events back, although I have to say this book is not hitting me as hard as the film did back then. First of all, because I'm now an adult, and seeing everything play out visually always really works very strong for me. So there are a few scenes in here that are tragic and where Black Beauty really steps up and is a hero that completely floored me as a child. But I still really enjoy this book, and I'm surprised at how accessible the writing is. Sometimes with Victorian children books, I don't feel at all that they are for children, because I would not have understood anything at all as a child. But with this book, I think I would have enjoyed it when I was young as well, with the Victorian writing as is. Of course, I would have read the Dutch translation as a child. So I'm going back to work now, and I will see you once I have finished Black Beauty. Sometimes you don't realize how tired you look until you turn on the camera. It is Sunday today and I've had a fun but busy weekend. On Friday we went to a bookstore or book cafe that we often go to, and I got a romance. This is Love Light Farms, which has been recommended quite a bit on BookTube. This of course is a Christmas romance, so I'll save it for December. And I got this really lovely, also Christmas themed coaster, which is from a small business called Brontë. I don't know how to pronounce her last name exactly, but I do follow her on social media. She has a YouTube channel as well. This bookstore had some of her items, but we need to talk about my Victober reads because I finished the last play in this collection, so we should probably add the date to it because I have done that for the last couple of years. I add the date when I read it, so this will be October 24. And that was An Ideal Husband. I think it is honestly as good as The Importance of Being Earnest, which is his most famous book. So to read a play was Ross's prompt, and there was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to read an Oscar Wilde play because then I would have finished this entire collection, which is so awesome. So An Ideal Husband is, I think you would call it a comedy of manners. Like what I believe how you would describe it is very much like Lady Windermere's Fan, where it's all about miscommunication, about people's standing, about people's reputation, and about the high society people having conversations in drawing rooms and during dinners. And this was really funny because of the good intentions a lot of people had and some bad intentions that others had. Miscommunication just ruins everything, but not in an annoying like romance trope miscommunication way, but in a really funny way. I'm not really gonna tell you what An Ideal Husband is about. It is of course like the characters is for you to enjoy yourself. It's quite a short play, so it would be a little bit unfortunate if I told you too much about it, but I listened to an audiobook performance of it, which I would highly recommend for any plays, because it adds so much when good actors give you their performance for a play versus just reading it yourself. The idea of An Ideal Husband plays out when we have two men, one who wants to be a husband, one who is, and how they are constantly making mistakes and how they look as a husband and how they actually are or how they could be as a husband, and yeah, how they're judged by society and by each other. That's kind of all I want to say about it because it's too funny and plot driven to tell you much more. Then I finished Black Beauty, which was everything I hoped it would be. It was very accessible, which I think I talked about in a previous clip. It was emotional, it was sad, and it definitely had a very clear story. And just finishing this book, it made me emotional. Of course, the ending, if you've read the book or seen the film, you know that's quite an emotional, beautiful ending. But it was this story also formed it for me as a child, and I think I really adopted the idea that animals have such rich inner lives and really feel their connection with you as a human as strong as you do with them. I didn't realize how massively this book had formed me, and therefore I just enjoyed it so much again. Reading it was as good as watching the film. I even feel like the film sometimes uses unnecessary pathos where this book definitely doesn't need it, and it wants to emphasize a little bit too much how horses are like humans, which I feel was not the core of the story that Anna Sewell wanted to write, because I think she wrote a very important piece on animal rights. I don't think any story has such an effect on me and how I felt as a child and teen about animal rights as Black Beauty. Yeah, I can believe it has taken me till I'm 30 to actually read the original book, but I would highly recommend anyone to read it. If you've enjoyed the film, you know that there are some tragedies and difficult parts in the film. So if you are okay with that, then it's a good plan to read the book, but do be aware that it's not necessarily an easy read, because it does have a story to tell and a message to give to its reader. I think this is going to conclude my Victober reading. We're not going to talk about the book I mentioned in my TBR that I'm definitely have not read a single page of because I don't have the time. Doctor's Wife I read, An Ideal Husband I read Vergatie's Prompt and Elizabeth Gaskell, and then I read Black Beauty, which wasn't for any prompt, but because I'm waiting with The Return of the Native, I'll probably read that in November, I picked that one for Kate's prompt. And I do think Black Beauty also works for her prompt, because religion is... It was very clever how religion had a part with one of the characters, with one of the most important human characters in the book. It doesn't for Black Beauty, of course, but he does observe how one of his owners looks at quality time and religion and Sundays, and I really enjoyed that part of the book actually. So yeah, I'm gonna use Black Beauty for that prompt. And then I did also not read the Wilkie Collins because I don't have the time, but then at least I have finished all the hosts their prompt, I believe. Yes, I did. Then this concludes my Victober vlogs of 2024. I am in a big non-fiction reading mood right now, which is amazing because non-fiction November is going to start next month and I have some great books lined up. I did make a end of year TBR if you want to see what kind of non-fiction books I'm going to read, but I've already started them, so very excited. For now, thank you so much for joining me on my Victober journey and I hope to see you in another video. Doei!